2009 is one of F1's most recent fairy tale years. The last time odds were defied, before the three back-to-back dynasties. Contrived at the last minute amidst the 2008 financial crisis, Ross Brawn, Jenson Button, Rubens Barrichello, and the brilliant staff of Brawn GP slapped around the grid for a year, won the championship, and left, without further explanation. This and more on Obnoxious Race Cars. Brawn GP is the only one-and-done driver and constructors champion in F1 history. One of the true greats of the V8 era, it ran a Mercedes power unit, which was odd considering it was the remnants of Honda's F1 program. Indeed, the BGP 001 was originally supposed to be Honda's 2009 F1 competitor, their would-be fourth straight year as a full works F1 team. However, the economic collapse of 2008 forced Honda's withdrawal. Initially, Honda wanted a quick and quiet exit, but team principal Ross Brawn and CEO Nick Fry managed to convince the board that being bought out would be a better option. After failing to find a potential buyer, Fry and Brawn, in one last stand, would orchestrate a full-on management buyout at their own expense. With a budget of only several £100,000 and a downsized staff, it was time to organize. Brawn decided to partner with Mercedes as their engine supplier, since the F0108W fit their package the best. Honda had planned to design an in-house curve system, but with limited time and resources, decided to focus instead on aerodynamics. In retrospect, this was obviously a worthwhile decision. The BGP 001's double diffuser was the main talking point of its design anyway. A diffuser is a downforce generating element that works by accelerating the flow of air under the car, creating an area of low pressure, which in effect sucks the car to the ground. The amount of downforce a diffuser generates, for lack of detail, increases with its surface area. The 2009 rules sought to reduce downforce levels by downsizing these diffusers, but Brawn GP took advantage of a loophole that allowed a second diffuser to be carved into the crash structure. Teams protested this to no avail. Their genius diffuser wasn't the only reason for their success though. Toyota and Williams also exploited this gray area, but did not share the same level of success. Lead aerodynamicist John Owen tells of only losing 3/10 without it. Nick Fry actually cites the Mercedes engine as being key. The BGP 001 only retired twice that year, and neither were due to engine failure. Finally, let's give it to Jenson and Rubens, two extremely consistent world-class drivers that made the most out of Brawn's three chassis. That year, they showed F1 what a last stand really looks like. Despite the sheer variety of Group C and GTP machines, the greatest ones can be siphoned out with relative ease. Porsche and their successful and universal 962, Sauber Mercedes and their roaring C9, the XJR and 905, 3.5-liter era domination. But there's one often ignored, and it's one of the most winningest by percentage. This is the AAR Toyota Eagle Mark III. AAR were a team of designers and engineers founded by Dan Gurney and Carroll Shelby. It was Gurney, alongside two other veteran AAR engineers, that went out and shook GTP to its core. In a time dominated by V8s, 10s, and 12s, came a 2.1-liter turbo 4-cylinder lap record destroyer. Indeed, there were some doubts around its design, with Toyota engineers back in Japan insisting that running the insane amount of boost pressure wouldn't hold up against the demands of an endurance race. The aerodynamics weren't exactly praised by the experts either, as it received some criticism about the size of the inlet and the grave uniformity of its beltline. A single massive air inlet fed multiple cooling systems, different than other designs that used multiple, more direct inlets. Another major difference was its underbody. Conventional prototypes were typically built on a one-piece underbody, whereas the Mark III was engineered with a front diffuser structurally separate from the rest of its floor. This criticism was all for nothing because the Mark III reportedly generated over 5,000 pounds of downforce at 150 miles per hour, 700 pounds more than its closest adversary at the same speed. For reference, a modern closed-top LMP2 produces less than 2,000. The single air inlet proved to reduce drag and surface turbulence, allowing airflow to more effectively reach the rear wing, resulting in more of that precious downforce. Of course, the Mark III proved menacing around a closed course. From its tenure from late 91 through 93, it won 21 out of the 27 races it entered, good enough for back-to-back teams and drivers' championships from P.J. Jones and Juan Manuel Fangio. Its Daytona lap record of 133 and 875 sat uncontested for 26 years, and its lap time at Laguna Seca of 111 and 294 was still nearly 4 seconds quicker than Ricky Taylor's 115 in 2019. GT 500, Super GT's top class, has evolved to host among the fastest tin tops in motorsports. Before the 2014 6 Hours of Fuji, the Toyota TS040 Hybrid laid down a 1 minute 25, good enough for 5th on the grid. That same year, the Nissan GTR GT500's pole time of 1:28 and 8 would have been 3 seconds quicker than Rebellion. In 2018, the GT500 class was, on average, about 4% slower than the LMP1 hybrids, according to a deep dive conducted by Afito. Honda had been a mainstay in GT500 since 1997, beginning with their mid-engined NSX, up until currently with their Civic Type R. Each iteration of their entries bore resemblance to their road-going counterparts, with the exception of one. Behold the HSV010. Striking and yet somewhat obscure, this was Honda's chance to remain on the grid that year despite changing regulations and economic downturn. Indeed, while the crisis halted Honda's plans for a 2010 F1 campaign, it also forced them to abandon production of a front-engined NSX successor. This was a massive problem for 2 reasons, as all GT500 entries were required to have a production counterpart, and new regulations required these cars to be front-engined and rear-wheel drive. This outlawed the old NSX in its mid-engine layout. Their production counterpart remained in its concept stage and never made it to market. But hey, at least they built the race car on time. Despite lacking a production counterpart, Super GT officials still granted Honda a chance, on the grounds of it being production ready. Its screaming engine note is thanks to the high-revving 3.4-liter V8 HR10 EG. Its unique single exhaust was less efficient, but was adopted since it improved the engine note. It would go on to lose this characteristic sound in its final year after an updated exhaust system. In its debut, the HSV010 competed against the already 2-year-old Nissan GTR and 4-year-old SC430. Despite this, it would go on to win its first and only championship out of 4 seasons of competition. While we may be left wondering what the original NSX successor could have been, at least we have no doubt around its race-ready counterpart.